So far, I would say it's been absolutely incredible.
Interesting decisions here that the Robotaxi made as far as exiting this parking lot. If I didn't know that this car was not being driven by a human, I would feel like it was the best Uber driver I've ever had.
What Tesla could do as a strategy is just essentially flood the Texas market with robotaxis and show the world what that future looks like.
Basically, take over the entire ride-hail market in Texas, completely eviscerate Waymo, Uber, and Lyft.
Yeah. The other thing too, Hans, that allows Tesla to do is if you have that many vehicles on the road, the robotaxi service essentially becomes a platform for other services. Whereas you go beyond quickly just moving people around. We're saving people a ton of money on the transportation costs.
We're saving lives. I mean, it's just a really boring, exceptional driver that makes Uber feel like. Well, we are here in Austin again today. I'm here with Cern Basher. We are taking some Robotaxi rides. Our car is, it looks like 2 minutes away. We got the red one today. So we're going to be filming some Robotaxi rides and then maybe talking about the future of what this rollout looks like moving forward. We're here. The service is actually launched. So what's next? What happens in between now and total and complete utter domination by Tesla of miles driven by humans that can be monetized? So those are going to be the things that we're really digging into as we progress. But
unfortunately, total utter domination won't come tomorrow.
No.
Maybe a few steps between here and there.
Yeah, maybe a few steps, maybe even a few years, probably.
And maybe even a few back steps, but hopefully not too many.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's going to be, quite the crazy, I think, emotional roller coaster that we should be prepared for, or at least the potential of a crazy roller coaster that we should be prepared for as investors.
Here it comes.
All right, look, here we are. This is the Robotaxi. Still, that beautiful Robotaxi badge here. No driver in the driver's seat, but our wonderful safety monitor. All right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Nice to hear you. Thank you very much. It's a little nicer and cooler in here than outside. It's nice.
Just a little bit.
A little.
Yeah.
97 degrees outside.
All right. So we have the start button down here. We're going to just go ahead and hit start and away we go. So. All right, Cern. So I guess maybe let's start. What has been your experience so far with the Robotaxi network? Initial impressions, strengths, maybe areas for improvement, and then we'll kind of branch out in the conversation from there.
Yeah, so this is my 6th ride so far. I had 2 rides on the first day, and now this is day 4, Wednesday. And this is our 4th ride today together. So far, I would say it's been absolutely incredible. I have not had any issues on any of the rides that I've had. Certainly there's some additional functionality in the app that I'd like to see, but I'm confident that'll come over time.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, the ability to change your destination while you're traveling, things like that. So the other thing, I guess, in terms of pickup points, it would be nice if the vehicle was maybe a little bit more precise about where it picks you up and drops you off. But again, I think that'll all come in time as well.
Interesting decisions here that the Robotaxi made as far as exiting this parking lot. I know we missed showing where we were, but we kind of went through some parts of the parking that we probably could have gone around, but those are it's easy to get kind of turned around this is like a mall style parking area.
Always more than one way to get to your destination.
Exactly. We definitely got there. We were safe. And certainly it was comfortable. It just maybe wasn't the optimal route, but no skin off my nose. So anyways, yeah, we're talking about opportunities for improvement. I've actually had really good experience with where it picks me up every time except for my very first ride. The very first ride that I did, I was on the backside of a hotel. I think it thought I was inside the hotel. And so it went around to the front side of that hotel to pick me up. So then I had to walk around the hotel to actually go get picked up. But other than that, it's picked me up pretty much exactly where I was every time. But I typically do my pickup points very close to where I was dropped off on the last one. So that's probably something that makes it easy for it to know exactly where to go. So, yeah.
Some people were saying that if they ordered the Robotaxi from inside a building, that the pickup point wasn't maybe as precise as if they were outside. Have you detected that with your
So
rides?
I haven't hailed from inside yet. So that would, and maybe that's similar to my first ride, close to what happened.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually inside, but maybe it thought I was inside.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it's been so uneventful so far, and in fact, you get to the point where you're in the ride and you sort of forget that it's being autonomously driven. It's so natural. You would think this is a professionally driven vehicle. That's what it feels like.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, sitting here behind the driver's seat, not being able to see that there's really no one there. The experience, if I didn't know that this car was not being driven by a human, I would feel like it was the best Uber driver I've ever had.
Yeah.
It's so smooth. It doesn't feel like it's in a crazy rush to get here, there, or anywhere. And the acceleration, the braking, it's been so far doing a great job of anticipating the moves that it needs to make in advance, that it doesn't get itself into any sticky situations. Just a phenomenal user experience from my standpoint as a rider, both today and on Sunday. It is definitely a cut above my version 13.2.9 FSD as far as the smoothness. And I typically drive in standard mode. Currently it's showing that the car is on standard mode here for the Robotaxi as well. And so I'm used to driving on standard mode, but I feel like this actually slows down in advance of stoplights and stuff even more smoothly than my car does on standard.
The other thing it did nicely on a couple rides ago, there was a line of traffic, and it thought to let a car coming in from the right enter the lane of traffic.
Yes, that was super courteous of it.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with it's seeing that ahead of time and creating that space for that vehicle. Very, very exceptional planning and courteous driving. So that was pretty awesome. All right, so as we watch the world go by around us, what's next for Tesla, the Robotaxi service over the next 24 months? And then how does the market react to the rollout of said service, in your very unprofessional opinion?
Right.
Not financial advice.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, as I look out, there's a couple of interesting things. Maybe we'll just get to that in a second. But first of all, I think in the near term, we're really interested to see, how quickly Tesla ramps up the number of vehicles in service here, how they expand the geofenced area and all that. That'll be really interesting. As I look out a little bit longer, sort of thought about, let's say they encounter some difficulties for whatever reason in expanding to other markets outside of Texas. Right? Let's say that there's roadblocks put up in California or other states. Right? What Tesla could do as a strategy is just essentially flood the Texas market with robotaxis and show the world what that future looks like with robotaxis literally everywhere and driving down the cost of ride hail.
Yeah.
From today, where we see numbers, you know, $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 a mile, sometimes even more in certain areas. For very short rides, the cost per mile can be a ridiculous number.
So it's just to understand what you're saying, basically take over the entire ride hail market in Texas from Waymo, like completely eviscerate Waymo, Uber, and Lyft in Texas to where none of them are able to like just take essentially all of their market share, potentially drive them out of the market entirely.
If they wanted to compete, they would just be losing billions and billions of dollars. So that would effectively drive them out of the market. Certainly any human-driven Ubers would leave very quickly because it wouldn't be economical for those drivers. So that's one strategy that Tesla could pivot to if they needed to, if they felt like there were roadblocks in other markets. And actually that wouldn't be a terrible strategy because it would be the perfect showcase to show the entire world
what's possible,
the benefits of a robotaxi system and how people benefit from low-cost transportation. They would not only take over the rideshare market, but they would also be starting to eat into car ownership and rental cars and public transportation and all those other forms of transportation. So that would be kind of interesting. Now,
so let's, for just a second, if Tesla doesn't decide to do that in Texas, do they decide to do it somewhere still?
Well, potentially. I think the more optimal strategy from a financial standpoint in the short term is to enter a bunch of markets and sort of enjoy the market pricing that's already there today.
Yep.
Why severely undercut the market if you don't have to?
Yeah.
Long term, yes, you will. But in the near term, why not undercut Uber and Waymo, but not by such a crazy amount? Like still give everybody the benefit of lower cost rides, but you don't have to go to the dollar per mile right away when Uber and Waymo are charging, you know, $5 or $6.
Yep.
Or even 3 or 4. So both strategies could work. From what we understand so far, Tesla is interested in expanding to other states, other markets, just like Waymo is doing, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But if in the event that there's some, you know, political roadblock or issue in some other markets, they could take a, you know, dominate Texas strategy, and which I think could be really interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder how many vehicles it would actually take to. There was another Robotaxi that just went by. I think James had said that his analysis showed another. No.
It's one of the rare human-driven
Model Ys. Yeah, I think he estimated it would take roughly 10,000 vehicles to cover the Chicago, I believe he said metropolitan area, not just, downtown and the city limits proper. So if we say, just doing rough napkin math, that it would take 10,000 per major Texas metro. You got DFW, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, El Paso. That's 5.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 50,000 vehicles. That's a fair chunk of CapEx. It's certainly less CapEx than doing that with an equivalent number of Waymos.
But that's also just to equal the current sort of rideshare market.
Yes.
Right. What I'm talking about in terms of a dominate Texas strategy is going way beyond that, and maybe putting twice as many vehicles into the market, maybe 100,000 vehicles in Texas, right? And that would then drive down the costs.
And drive up the availability,
Yes.
because you can expand the coverage area well beyond where Uber's current market or map limitations would be as well.
That's right.
So yeah, you can reach out into the small towns, kind of out in the surrounding areas of these big metros, and give people access to, be able to taxi into and out of town for a price that's probably not much more than it would cost them to drive their own vehicle, and they don't have to drive.
That's right.
That would be fantastic.
The other thing too, Hans, that allows Tesla to do is, if you have that many vehicles on the road, the Robotaxi service essentially becomes a platform for other services. Whereas you go beyond quickly just moving people around. You can move packages and food and so on around. So you can layer on additional revenue streams there too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think I agree with you though, that, getting too aggressive in doing that just in one market while the rest of the world is left untapped and unchanged is kind of it would show obviously that Uber and Waymo and Lyft are dead as companies well before their revenues are dead. That would be an incredibly chaotic situation in the public markets. But at the same time, those companies would still be enjoying lots of profits from all of these other areas, and Tesla would have, driven down their margins in Texas below where they would necessarily have to be. So
the positive with that though is then you've got other people in other states saying, look at Texas, look at what the benefits that the citizens of Texas are enjoying. How come we don't have that in California? How come we don't have that in Florida? Whatever state is putting up barriers.
Except for the truck driver lobby and the cab driver lobby.
Well, true. There's going to be competing forces, and there always will be. But Uber was successful in what they did to taxis. Right. On the strength of offering a service that was more convenient and all that. So I think Tesla would have a strong case to make from a political standpoint of saying, look what we're doing. We're saving people a ton of money on the transportation costs.
We're saving lives.
Saving lives. Right. Yeah. So that again wouldn't be my number one strategy for them. Only if they were somehow blocked in terms of entering other markets.
Just a little quick commentary here. Let's see, we have another one. So we've been going over these big speed bumps here on this road, and I just wanted to give the Robotaxi props in the way that it handles those. Very smooth, very comfortable. Speed bumps are never fun, but I don't feel like I'm being jostled around unnecessarily here in the back of the Robotaxi. It's a very comfortable ride.
And by the way, in an all Robotaxi world, at some point, we won't need speed bumps anymore.
Exactly. And we'll be able to get to where we need to go faster, because in the roads where there are no human drivers, the Robotaxis will probably be able to drive significantly faster than they drive currently.
Faster where it's appropriate and slower where it's necessary.
Right.
Yep.
And all controllable by software.
Yep.
So makes sense. There's a low Waymo. Here, should we try to get? Oh, he's going a different way. We can't see how jostly the Waymo ride is over the speed bumps. Yeah. So coming back to the rollout, we've talked about what it would look like to dominate Texas. What do you think the strategy where they just try to slowly boil the frog of Uber and Lyft? I think Waymo is going to be trying to scale aggressively. I don't know where they're going to get enough vehicles to continue to scale aggressively. But
yeah, an issue with them is even if they scale aggressively, on their terms, right, relative to their fleet today, that's going to pale in comparison to what Tesla can do as far as scaling. And then, of course, Tesla's cost structure is so much slower.
Yeah, they have 1,500 cars on the road today. I've heard that there's roughly 100 cars here in Austin, and they have a coverage area here in Austin that's about twice as big as what the Tesla Robotaxi coverage area is. And you do see them quite frequently. I've seen a whole bunch of them today, and that's just with 100 cars. But if you go onto the Uber app and you want to order a ride, even if you say that you would like a Waymo, you're not guaranteed one, because they need significantly more cars to provide consistent service than just what Waymo is able to provide at this point. And so they have 1,500 cars today. They're looking to add about 2,000 more cars over the next year. In fact, I think it's more than that. I think 2,000 cars by the end of 2026. which is, almost 18 months from now.
Which is a drop in the bucket compared to what Tesla could do if they wanted to add vehicles.
Yeah, once Tesla is ready to really turn on their scaling, there's 5,000 Model Ys made, I think, just in Austin every single day. Something to that effect.
Yeah, so we're about 2 minutes away from our destination, and it's been a perfectly smooth ride. Handling all the speed bumps better than I would.
Speed bumps and all of the maneuvers, very safe, very comfortable. And we just got your ride is about to end notification.
Yeah, about a minute away from the end of the ride. It sounds a little beep and tells us on the screen, make sure to gather your belongings.
I see a Cybertruck and
there we go.
Somebody pointing at us, and it looks like maybe a Bradford Ferguson hanging out over there. So cool. Well, great discussion, Cern. I think we're gonna go get out of the car and meet up with some other people. And was always fun.
Yeah, thanks.
Eventful, uneventful at the same time. Perfect. Exactly what we are looking for this stage of the Robotaxi rollout. And we will catch y'all next time. All right. We are riding Robotaxis again. Me, Cern Basher. And we're going to pick up in part of the conversation that we were trying to get to on the last ride. So, Cern, what are the biggest unforeseen challenges to Robotaxi rollout and scale up, a possible limiting factor that you haven't heard anyone else talking about yet?
Well, what I've been thinking about is lawsuits. Inevitably, there is going to be accidents, whether it is Robotaxi's fault or not. There's going to be accidents. More likely than not, it's not going to be Robotaxi's fault, but still, there'll be accidents, and that means lawsuits.
Yep.
And so part of the limiting factor, the limiting ability for Tesla to scale might be, maybe, the number of lawsuits that they'll face as they scale the fleet.
Yep. It is fortunate that at least, we'll have incredible video evidence of anything that happens. And so I think that will help mitigate the surface area of lawsuits where people are trying to say that Tesla is at fault, but is not. But if we are going to scale up to any meaningful fraction of the total number of miles driven by humans in the United States, then it is pretty much guaranteed that there's going to be some Tesla at fault accidents, and that is going to be, quite the overhead that we're going to have to deal with. So, how do you think about the way that could play out, or will likely play out, or how should retail investors kind of prepare themselves?
Well, I think just kind of expect the inevitability of that there will be legal challenges. Any business that runs any kind of operation has lawsuits that they contend with. In the case of Robotaxi, if I remember my numbers correctly, at 99.9999, so 4 nines past the decimal point, if you had a fleet of 1 million vehicles, I think you're looking at potentially 100,000 lawsuits a year at that scale, assuming the average Robotaxi does 100,000 miles a year. Who knows what the numbers are, but so the question is, does Tesla want to scale up a legal team to handle 100,000 lawsuits a year? Right now, again,
the law of large numbers is quite the challenge.
And that's based on accident rate, or if you want to call it injury rate, or even a death rate, whatever rate you want to track in terms of that issue. So that's the challenge from just a legal standpoint. And I that's something to your question. I don't think a lot of people have really thought about that yet. There's, I think, some mitigating factors. I think FSD is only going to get better. So as they scale, they'll be scaling along with FSD's capability. So if you can drop that down to 99.9959 after the decimal point, then you can drop that down by a factor of 10.
Mm-hmm.
So from 100,000 lawsuits down to 10,000. Well, it might be more manageable.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I think is an important metric that Tesla will probably use to decide how, when do they finally hit the accelerator pedal on the rapid scale up of the fleet. We've got to figure out, there's a lot of logistics that have to be figured out in order for us to operate robotaxi fleets of millions of vehicles.
There's the charging infrastructure, the cleaning infrastructure. There's
all the logistics of placing your vehicles in a way that makes sense to maximize revenue, dealing with your peaks and troughs. Like there are a lot of legitimate logistics that Uber has figured out in their quest to dominate the ride-hail market that Tesla have to do similarly, but those things will be changed by the dynamics of not having a driver in the seat.
And even some new ones, huh? So like just determining how the weather is going to affect the service, when to put a pause on service during weather and things like that. Just trying to figure out what the optimal strategy around that is. With Uber, I would imagine they leave it up to their drivers. So this is something that Tesla
will have to
figure out for themselves.
Make their own decision.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, you mentioned, I guess we both have mentioned Uber here, that Uber has probably also had to deal with this legal challenge. And if the accident rate of Robotaxi can be a fraction of whatever Uber's accident rate is, then we should be able to actually have some sort of solid idea, just looking at Uber's financials and how much they spend on legal, and then maybe do some fraction on that. I do think, this is one of the things that I know for a fact is a huge part of the cost structure of Uber, is that they have to have very large insurance premiums. The insurance premium that an Uber driver pays are significantly more than what someone who is a residential user of a vehicle is going to have, because they're exposed to so much more risk, because they drive often, and on top of that, Uber has big fat deep pockets, and anyone who's suing them knows that, and so the size of those payouts ends up being pretty significant. But that said, we should at least, this is not an unknown, right? It is a known unknown that we can reason about.
And I ran some really rough numbers, and I just said if the average lawsuit settlement is like $250,000 at a million vehicle fleet, that's something like $2.5 billion of settlement money out the door. And that sounds like a crazy amount of money. But keep in mind at that scale, the business might be generating $100 billion in revenue. So that's 2.5% of revenue. That's like credit card processing fees.
Yes. That's lower than most people's credit card processing.
Right. So just put that in perspective. Like, okay, the number of lawsuits is massive. The amount of money we're talking about is massive, but it's also on a massive business. And so as a percentage of revenue, it might not be crazy.
And you only pay out at that level if you're doing that many rides, which should bring that much business.
The business can support it for sure. It's not a deal breaker, but still it's something worth thinking about. And again, I think it just speaks to the need for Tesla to continue to improve FSD. It's the March of Nines. I mean, we've all been talking about this for a long time, but it plays itself out in terms of their legal costs.
It is going to be such a wild thing to watch over the next coming years. How quickly are we able to scale up the service, and what are the limiting factors that actually end up being the ones that matter? If you have 10 different things that could be the limiter, and usually it's not going to be one thing forever. It's it's going to move around. At one point in time it'll be one thing, and another point in time it'll be something else. Like maybe it starts out being regulatory, and then it ends up being charging at some point, and then it moves over, and for a while the bottleneck is potentially legal or something to that effect. So
they're all solvable things.
Right.
And that's what you want, is something that you can work through and solve. And maybe it takes a quarter or two to work through some of the issues, or perhaps longer on some of the bigger ones, but that's okay.
So how much runway do you think Tesla has based on the competitive marketplace to actually get all the first principles right and achieve basically unbeatable network effects. If it takes them 5 years to really be able to iron out all of the kinks and scale to every major area in the United States, is that too late, or is that more than enough time to establish those effects?
I don't know what the right time frame is. I think for me, it's just a matter of however long it takes to get it right. Being first does not guarantee success, and I think Apple has shown that throughout their history. They were never really first to market with anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you come to market with a better, cheaper, more efficient, more enjoyable solution, and people will adopt that. And I think that's the opportunity for Tesla.
Yes, and especially cheaper and more scalable being the big ones for, I guess, Apple does the quality. Theirs isn't necessarily cheaper, but their cost of manufacturing is actually very, very, it's industry leading for the quality of product that they provide. That's for sure.
That's right.
So, excellent. All right. Well, we are here. This ride is coming to an end. And thanks for hanging out with me today, Cern. It's been a blast. Glad that we could sync up. And
thanks for having me, Hans. This has been fun to experience these Robotaxi rides. So,
yes. And for the audience, the entire day today, I think this is ride number 5?
Yeah.
Absolutely flawless. No issues at any point today that made me feel uncomfortable or nervous for any reason. I mean, it's just a really boring, exceptional driver that makes Uber feel lame.
That's right. Thanks, Hans.
Right. Thank you. So that's interesting that, makes sense. You don't get to start the ride until after your seatbelt's on.
How do you? I was looking. What?
I always look to see, do the people who are already driving Teslas, are they looking and paying attention?
Yeah, most aren't.
So far, no.
No. They're just like regular drivers.
Why aren't everyone nerds like us?
Exactly. Yeah, there's a long way to go before masses understand what's happening here. Slows down less for the speed bumps there.
Yeah. Very, very smooth. I feel like it's even more smooth than my car in standard drive or standard mode when it comes to lots of things, but it doesn't slow down as harshly either, like the stop signs and stuff. Nice, cautious.
Yep. A little difficult to see them.
Yep. There's that being the car coming right as it pulled out,
Mhm.
but
Still wasn't bad.
wasn't bad, and definitely couldn't have done any better as a human. There
No.
was no visibility. It's so chill, like, especially from right here where I can't even see that there's nobody in the driver's
Yeah.
seat.
No, you wouldn't know.
Yeah. And especially the fact that it's not all in a hurry like a lot of Uber drivers get. They're driving real aggressive.
Yeah, if they're stressed, you feel their stress.
Yeah.
Or if you're stressed and you want them to go faster and they're not, right? There's a disconnect. And here you have no, you just kind of settle back and relax.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to see how it handles that, over time as they build out the capabilities of the system. Like, I assume that at some point he'll be able to interface with a grok assistant in the car and say, hey, can you please take this route specifically?
Yeah. Yeah, you just talk to it. Say, can you please hurry up?
Yeah. And it'll go as fast as it'll go.
I'll take the risk if there's a speeding ticket. Just go up fast.
Yeah. I would have to doubt that it would do some of those things that an actual cab driver would do, because, a cab driver is only taking risk on behalf of himself.
Yeah.
And I guess, to some extent his company. But yeah, if you're significantly increasing the chance of, I guess it would have to, they'd have to determine, is there a way to go significantly faster without increasing the risk of a major accident that would cause injury? Because, if a Robotaxi does that, then obviously that's the fault of all Robotaxis.
Yeah.
Not just that specific car.
And people would be asking him to do stupid things.
Yeah.
But there's going to have to be some serious limits around that. Yeah, I'm late for my airplane. Can you please drive really aggressively?
Sorry, would you like me to let you out so you can get a human driver?
Yeah.
We'll put you and the public at risk.
That's right.
Oh, there's another Robotaxi right there. No driver.
Mm-hmm. Interesting though, when you are able to talk to the vehicle, what information it'll tell you about its own thinking about how it's driving.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Well,
what
and-
did you see back there? Like, why did you brake or something, right?
And how do you know that it's not just BSing you? Because as far as all the research that I've seen so far
Yeah.
shows that it will answer you, but its answer like is not any more grounded in the reality of its reasoning process than
maybe.
and like it hallucinates its answers to how it's reasoning as much as anything else, if not more, because it doesn't have that internal awareness part yet. And yeah, like I can't remember who the people were that were doing the research that I saw, but they could kind of monitor the activations of the weights throughout the neural net, and they could and then obviously it was doing its chain of reasoning thing, and so they could read all of that stuff and then afterwards ask it, and it's like, meh, this is not necessarily accurate. This is just an answer to make you happy because that's its job. And the answer needs to be some sort of narrative that makes sense, at least at some level. But I will be, that'll be something to watch and see if the XAI team is able to really work on, because especially for the mathematical things and the programming things where they can explore the space very deeply and verify answers, that obviously if you can get it to, like, you want to be able to interrogate its logical thought process to explore a problem so that you can solve those things better.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and I know, they're not the only ones who want to solve that
Look at this
problem.
living nice gap here. Letting this car turn when the cars were backed up.
Very, very courteous.
That's very nice.
Good job, Robotaxi.
That's better than a human right there.
Better than 99.9% of Texas drivers.
Yeah.
Like, screw you.
Better than 110% of Florida drivers.